Welcome to Brunch with Brian this morning. Great to see you. And so today, on last Teaching Tuesdays, we talked about expectations, and that was it sounded a little echoey here. I'm actually in our front foyer, where when you first walk into our house, so it's a little tiley and a kind of a round rotunda here. So I don't normally set up here, so it's a little bit different. So that's fun. Always like to do new and different things. So today I did want to touch on that expectations theme because it's such an important theme, and I think some of you guys missed that call. So if you missed that call, and this was our Teaching Tuesdays call, remember we have those recorded. And so I am working on setting up an archive of those that you can listen to. But I want you to go ahead and email us at support@thewolfcouple.com. If somebody wants to put that in the chat there, support@thewolfcouple.com, and ask for the recording from Teaching Tuesdays about expectations, the Teaching Tuesdays from 2 days ago. So we talked about expectations in a sort of a microcosm and a macrocosm. Expectations for yourself in your life. What do you expect? I mean, when you were growing up, what were the expectations others had of you? Now, we also didn't have time to get to the expectations test. So there's actually a test on expectations that it asks you a lot of questions about you and what are your expectations of yourself. In fact, you know what? I've got a great idea. Tomorrow, I'm going to go over that expectations test on teaching on this Brunch with Brian. So I'm going to actually ask you some of the questions off the test. But let's start thinking about our expectations. What are your expectations of your real estate? That's an important question because expectations is what leads to success, failure. If you ever see an issue in a relationship, and we talked about that, partially in the Teaching Tuesday. When you are in a relationship, if you have a conflict, just look at whose expectations are not being met and what specific expectation is not being met. And sometimes you realize it's not a realistic expectation, or maybe it is a realistic expectation, but it was an unspoken expectation. So the other person wasn't aware of this expectation. So if you find an issue between you, and this is especially true in marriage, if it's a constant kind of running issue, just look at what your expectations are and how your partner is not living up to those expectations, or vice versa, how you are not living up to your partner's expectations on some issue. And that can revolve around just about anything. One of the things that's common is taking care of yourself. Now, me and Lynette are fortunately right at the same level on that. We both are we're just really into pickleball right now. And so you have to try to stay in shape. And, that automatically kind of keeps you in shape because you get a lot of exercise. And yes, Lynette plays pickleball every single day. I play pickleball about 5 days a week, but she's at a pickleball lesson right now with our son, who has become a pickleball coach. Our son, Kale, on the side, he loves pickleball so much, he got certified as a coach, and now he's coaching people. And so that's great. So that helps us keep in shape. But I mean, I'm just using that as one example of an area where maybe your expectations for each other aren't lining up. And then expectations around money, there's all kinds of expectations. So what did you expect when you were growing up? How much did you expect to be a rich person? It's that poor dad, rich dad, poor dad dichotomy. So, growing up, did you have expectations that you were going to be rich, that you were going to have a lot of money? I sort of did. And you look at what factors kind of led to that belief. And one of the factors was we had a neighbor who lived right next door to us who was rich. And we weren't rich, and it wasn't really a particularly rich neighborhood. But these people, it was funny, they never cared about their house or whatever. I mean, even when they were super rich and owned a whole bunch of apartment complexes, I visited them and actually worked with them for a while down in Tampa, St. Pete, and they just had a really modest house. and like not really that nice of a house, and they own like 5 huge apartment complexes, and we're rich in real estate. So I think that sort of set this expectation in me that at some point I'm going to get rich in rental real estate, and that's exactly what happened. It took me a while. I went through a circuitous route because I thought I was going to be in Hollywood. I thought I was going to be writing screenplays and directing and all that, but that turned out to be pretty crazy business. And I was doing that for 7 years, and it was interesting. But when we started having kids, you need something a little more realistic, substantial, and then we got into real estate, but in different ways. We were both real estate agents. I got into mortgages. I was a mortgage broker, and then I was running a mortgage office. And then finally, we got into investing. So we went through a long path. Now, what was our expectation going in? My expectation was that we were going to make a lot of money in real estate. When I always thought we were going to figure out a way, but we went through a lot of other, teachers and people before we really locked in and got the right, got it figured out. Okay. There was even this guy really a long time ago called Dave Del Dotto, who we used to watch. This was like back when I think about it, this was, I think, in the 90s or the 80s even. And so we had been thinking about how to do investing for a long, long time, and just hadn't locked into the right sort of KPIs, key performance indicators, and we didn't really figure out how to do creative financing deals until much later. So once we really figure that stuff out, then everything shifted. But going into it, I always thought we were going to make a lot of money. And so I had that expectation. Usually life is a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's a good note. If you ever take notes during these Brunch with Brian's, that's a good one. Life is a self-fulfilling prophecy, meaning just be very careful of what expectations you have about yourself, your future, your real estate career, and hopefully you have expectations of success. You probably don't expect to be, a multi-million. You probably don't expect to have $10 million in the bank, and that's probably realistic. But could you have a couple of $1 million in the bank? Could you be living in $1 million home? Absolutely. Those things are very doable. Those things are doable within a few years. If you really look long term and you're on the right path and doing the right things, 10 years out, we could be talking about, $10 million and, some really good income and passive income. That's the one thing I want you guys to think about is passive profits. I'm going to talk a lot more about passive profits. So if you have deals that have passive profits, that's going to create your future and give you what you want in life. So that's really something that I love focusing on, and that's a lot of times creative financing deals, but not always. You don't always have to get financing from a seller. If it's a good deal, if you can buy a $70,000 house that cash flows at $500 a month, and you have to go get financing, and you have to put 20% down, that's about 15 grand down. But you're buying a cash flow that's going to be $500 a month. So that would only take 30 months to make up your whole down, except for you're going to sell on a lease purchase. So you're going to get maybe $10,000 of that back right away. So you're only, if you can get into properties and you're about even, or a little bit ahead, that's just, that's a wonderful way of doing business. You're going to be setting up all these cash flowing little units that are producing money for you, and essentially with nothing down. So what are your expectations going into the business? What do you expect to make? And that is tied to your goals too. So what are your goals? Well, your goals are kind of your expectations, hopefully what you expect to make. You don't set a goal and say, I don't think I'm going to make that goal. No, you set a goal because your expectation is that you're going to do what it takes to make that goal. Now you have to make plans. Remember, your success trinity is goals, plans, and schedule. So the schedule makes it real. You can have all the goals you want, but if you don't put in, 4 hours a week or 5 or 7 hours a week, you're not going to be able to reach the goals. You got to talk to a certain number of sellers and buyers every week to make the business run. And so if you're not doing that, obviously nothing's going to happen. So it's all geared to taking action, and that, will lead to the fulfillment of your expectations. If you have high expectations, obviously you're going to have you're going to have to invest in, time and focus in the business at a higher level. Okay, so that's one thing. I talk about expectations with the business, but I like to talk about expectations with life too. Good morning, everybody. Hey, Lee, and there's Bill, and Caleb is always here. Always great to see you. Tony, thank you, sir. Oh, yes, I gave you a shout out, and on Teaching Tuesdays, that's right. Good morning, fellow investors. Look at everybody. Hi, everybody. So, guys, I want you to, all right, great. Coming down to Savannah. So I want you guys to really focus on setting the right expectations and then following through and making sure you achieve those expectations through your actions. And that's not just in real estate, but also financially, in your relationships, and then just being aware of it. Sometimes that's really the first step sometimes because mostly we're sort of blindly or kind of just unconsciously walking around with all these expectations, and we never really stop and say, okay, well, what are my expectations of that person? So now and remember, anytime you have an issue or a challenge between you and another person, boil it down to the expectations. That's sort of a clinical way to do it. It's a way to do it where you don't have to get all emotional about it and get in a big fight, but just say, hey, you know what I figured out is that I realize that I have this expectation of you, and I don't know if it's fair or not, and I don't know if you agree with it or not, but this is my expectation. And I realize that every time you don't live up to that expectations, I'm getting upset with you. And maybe I have never been clearer that I have this expectation, but what do you think about this? Do is this an unreasonable expectation, or is it okay for me to have this? Do you think it's okay for me to have that expectation? So again, I'm getting pretty granular. I'm getting down to the nitty-gritty on this, but that's how you could have a conversation with someone who you're having an issue with. And that way you kind of, it's a way to open the door without getting in a fight over the same old thing, and so just being clear on your own expectations. And then you can always say, now I think we have a problem because I think you have this expectation of me that I'm always going to be 5 minutes early. My mom was always late. My dad was always late. I'm just kind of a late person, and I'm sorry, but I'll do my best, but I'm not going to be in the car 5 minutes early, and if you're sitting out in the car, every time we're going somewhere, looking at your watch and getting grumpier and grumpier because you have this expectation that I'm going to be there 5 minutes early, either I need to somehow change my behavior, or you need to change your expectation. So I just like to boil it down to that because I think it's such an easy way to solve a lot of issues, because so many times the expectation isn't even on the table. Nobody even realizes what the expectation is. It's unspoken. So you can't work it out if nobody knows what the problem is. All right, so I've gone on a little bit. So start thinking about expectations. Again, if you want that Teaching Tuesday copy of that, go ahead and email to support@thewolfcouple.com. And we'd love to get that to you. So have a great Thursday. What should be our affirmation for today? It should be, I'm aware of my own expectations. It sounds kind of like basic, but that's really important. I think most of us go through life not all that aware of our own expectations of life, of ourselves on a daily basis. That's another good one. If you're kind of not feeling great at the end of the day, and not feeling particularly positive, look at, well, what were my expectations of myself this morning? What did I expect to get done today? And, did I fall quite a bit short of my objective, of my expectations? And that's probably why you're not feeling great. However, if you exceed expectations, that's a great way to live. You say, set your expectations in the morning. And that, again, is sort of like setting your goals, setting your action steps. But, you can have a list of action steps and say, I'm not going to get through all these today, but I expect myself to get to, number 4. Put them in priority and say, I at least want to, for sure, I expect myself to get through at least 4. Now, if it would be great if I could get through 5 and 6, and that would be exceeding expectations. And if I can do a little of exceeding expectations every day, I feel great at the end of the day. So again, that's a way to kind of view your day to be more productive. Okay, so I am aware I live up to my own expectations. Let's say that one. That's a little bit more positive. I live up to my own expectations. We always say our affirmations 3 times on 3. Okay. I live up to my own expectations. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I live up to my own expectations. I live up to my own expectations. I live up to my own expectations. Yeah, it's a little bit long, but yes, that's good energy. All right, let's do 3 deep breaths. We always follow up our affirmations with 3 deep breaths. Deep breath in. And always a big smile on your face. And when you let it go, make sure to relax your shoulders and your neck. We always hold a lot of tension in our shoulders and neck. I've been doing a lot of self-massage lately because I've been a little stiff. If your knee is stiff or if your foot is stiff, it's amazing. You know, just get in there. You can do a massage just like going to a masseuse. You know, you can't reach your back, right? But you can reach your knee. And so, you know, a lot of times that will really help. And that's really good for your ligaments and muscles. It loosens up tightness. It keeps you from locking up and getting frozen shoulder and stuff like that. So I'm a huge believer in what we call self-massage. And I used to teach that in Taking Action. I had a whole section in the manual about it. So I really believe in that. If you're stiff, especially if you play sports or something and you have a nagging, you know, area that's causing you some pain, if you massage it out, that really also brings blood flow to the area, heals it faster. It brings heat. So there's all kind of good things that happen when you do a massage like that. Okay, another deep breath in. Smile and let it go. Okay, one more. Feels so good. Big smile and you always do these with me, right? It's not just me doing them by myself. You're doing it with me. All right, so great, guys. Awesome to see you today. Until I see you tomorrow, keep expecting success, getting awesome training, and taking lots of